often when you're composing as an artist, you do something, you look at it, see how it works, maybe you take something away, maybe you add something, that's like composition, like on a painting, right? You do the same in sculpture. And I very much think about it in material. It's very much about adding or reducing material. And there's always this factor of like, there's always elements of rough and feminine and hard and soft and so on, and often the industrial materials, they very much speak to me. More natural materials, they're more, I think, a conceptual decision. That I still don't really understand myself why it is like that, but I see it happening again and again, and it's been pointed out many times when I've been in conversation with people about art, is there's a certain balance between feminine and masculine in my work. It's kind of hard to explain because I don't really get it myself so really, but it's something about mental states and understanding ourselves. Bending steel with my hands under the sun, it was amazing, it was like, that I love, that drives me. Many hours where I sit and look at where I've gotten to and consider whether or not they're the right direction. Sometimes it's clear, okay, today I have to carve 2 wooden legs that have to go into this, and then that takes several days or something. But there's the reflection time and the thinking time is equally important, because that is going to be the contextual base, that's going to be like the meaning of the piece. The works should be specific but open enough that they could create a kind of a bridge to the images we have in our own mind, because it's a bit like I'm very fascinated with smell as well, and I've used it several times as well in my works. And apart from using it as a kind of a reactor or something in my work, I also think like, the way we understand smell, or the associations that happen in our mind with smell, is so specific. It's so much more detailed than any other sense that we have. And that is different for every person, because the chemical composition is different too, with our own pheromones and so on. So in reality, like, whatever smell particles would come here would then blend with mine, it would make a different composition. So every experience is different. And I think that the kind of images, at least I would like to create with visual images, should work that way as well. That they shouldn't be, they shouldn't be like informative, like here you go. It's like, they should be open. They should actually just become these kind of bridges to all the things that are inside our own head anyway. I had this idea of doing a kind of a spectrum that goes from futurism, a future, and primordialism. And so over the last years, I've worked a lot with primordial themes and done many works that have these references, and some of the materials that I somehow feel inclined to use to bring this type of primordialism out is things like hair and moss and things that are living but somehow also have an otherworldly, like animal pelts and Stone Age type of things. I'm super curious about this idea of primordialism being also, like in German it's called Ursprung, right? It's like the root of where things come from. And I think somehow in this is what I'm trying to get at, in an abstracted psychological state, a future and a beginning, or a core of where things come from, can flow into being the same. They're equally abstract. There's kind of a step between when a material ignites a piece and starts a piece. I take it to a certain point and then I stop and kind of look at then conceptually what is like maybe the narrative. It projects a kind of emotion, I would say, often the material, And that takes me down a certain path. There's so many different versions of hair in my work, and many of it's just hair in my head, you know, like the moss hair. I see it as in the way that I use the moss sometimes. And then I use directly human hair, and I use fur, but I also make steel hair, and it's this kind of idea of creating hair out of many different things and slowly developing it away from its own base of just being hair, like a found object of hair, and it transforming into having its own life and having its own kind of expression. It's like trial and error. You put it on, you look, and the thing that you often don't know when you see a finished piece of work is how many hours are actually spent just sitting and looking or reading and considering where it is you're going with this piece. I think I'm very curious about my own rationalism. I think I'm a really rational person. I'm not really a particularly dreamy, this kind of stereotypical artist that you think like, oh, they're really weird and they're antisocial and they kind of dream all day long and they don't have many friends or whatever. I'm not like that at all. I'm really open and I think pretty honest and very rational, which I think is a bit strange. I always thought, in the beginning, I thought I couldn't be rational if I should be an artist, but of course I realized that's not true. I mean, can only be me when I'm doing what I do, and so this idea of rationalism and where rationalism disappears fascinates me. I don't have some kind of idea that I should be like, that my works in 500 years should be like, in glass cabinets somewhere and people should look at it because it's insanely important for history or something like that. I can't even imagine that.